Hello friends, today I'm going to be going over all of the books that I've loved so far in 2025. So these are all the books that I've given either 4.5 or 5 stars from January 1st up until the end of April. So a lot of people were doing like by quarter, January through March. I'm late, so I'm doing January through April. So I do have, I think, 11 books here to talk about, and then I had 3 rereads that I gave 5 stars, which if you've been here a while, you know what the rereads are, okay? But first things first, let's just go ahead and get into it. January 1st, I forgot that I read this book. This was my first book of 2025, and it was Lunar Park by Bret Easton Ellis. This is the first read of this one was, like I said, January 1st, and I loved this book so much. If you've been here a while, you know Bret is my favorite author. So, this one is different than his other books, so it's kind of like a little bit of autofiction, a little bit horror, thriller, and satire rolled into one. So we're following Bret. Basically, he becomes super famous after his release of Less Than Zero, and he's now like this big shot celebrity, and he ends up getting married to a woman who has a child of her own, and then they have a child. So we're just following this family, and they move into this home and something is not quite right, okay? So he thinks that his dead father might be coming back to haunt him, and it's kind of this play on the past and past trauma coming back to like literally haunt you. And then also we're following this storyline where the things that happened in the book American Psycho are now happening in real life. So he thinks someone might be copying the book, but then also like this creepy weird shit's going on in the house. The beginning of this book is absolutely hilarious, and then it starts getting more into like horror territory. It ended up getting pretty deep like emotionally, and then ended on just like a super bleak note. So I was like, yes, love that, 5 stars. I love this book so much, so well done. And then, of course, my 3 rereads were Bret Easton Ellis books because I filmed a Bret Easton Ellis guide where I reviewed every single one of his books and then ranked them. So I will leave that one linked up above and down below if you haven't seen it already. But I did a reread of Less Than Zero and then the sequel, Imperial Bedrooms. Absolutely loved both of them. And then I did a reread of The Shards for my Patreon book club. This was our pick for the month of March. No, the month of April. So I did a reread for this so that way I could discuss that during the live. So yeah, I reread these 3, and then this one was fresh for me. So I gave 4 5 stars to Mr. Bret Easton Ellis. Okay, what can I say? I'm obsessed. Then I think right after that in January, I read The Delivery Man by Joe McGinnis Jr. This is a book about a man. He's in a long distance relationship and also is dealing with his like childhood best friend named Michelle, and she runs this like call girl business out of her apartment with her boyfriend. And so she's constantly getting into these sketchy scenarios and then having our main character Chase come like watch her and like hang out and make sure nothing bad happens, and he's constantly around to help her, and like he's kind of in love with her. So that's what we're following throughout this book. And you see just like how fucked up these characters are, the trauma that our main character went through in the past, and kind of the dilemma that he's facing being stuck between these 2 women, and just kind of how empty and shallow and self-centered everyone in this book is. It reminds me of the Bret Easton Ellis universe. Everyone is so detached and bleak and hopeless and empty. And I loved everything about this book. It was just that whole like disturbing undertone where I needed to know what was going on. I so desperately wanted to fly through this one. I think I did dedicate like an entire day to it when it was snowing, and I just devoured this. I loved it so much. Such a good book. Again, another one that ends on such a bleak note. That's my thing. That's my thing. And I refuse to get a new thing. Okay, that is my personality, the bleak endings. And I did a vlog where I read a couple recommendations from Melissa Broder, who I adore. And she had 3 bangers that I absolutely loved. And the first one was The Princess of 72nd Street by Elaine Krapp. This one is about a woman who basically experiences manic episodes, and she calls them periods of radiance. So she is basically explaining to us what happens during these periods of manic radiance. And she believes that she's a princess on 72nd Street in New York, and she kind of just tells us like the people that are there and the rules and the things that she thinks up during these periods. So basically this book is about women's mental health and mental health care, and just all the things that this woman has gone throughout relationships in her life. So we're following all these different relationships that she's had with men, from boyfriends to marriage to hookups. So we're just following how she was treated by all of these men and kind of how their mental health care was compared to women's. This is from the 70s, so things are a little bit different now, but not by much. Literally, I can say in 2025, this book is not all that different. So yeah, lots of commentary about mental health. Such a great read. Absolutely loved it. And then I read The Days of Abandonment by Elena Ferrante. This was another Melissa Broder rec that I absolutely loved. This is literary fiction about a woman who is abandoned by her husband and goes into a massive mental breakdown, downward spiral afterwards. So this is her basically abandoned, living alone for the first time with her 2 children and her German Shepherd. And you're following just like the whole grief process that happens to you after a breakup or an abandonment, as she calls it, and just what is going through her head, and quite literally her descent into madness. If you have a problem with animal cruelty, do not read this book. Like, it is basically the entire book, but it is much deeper than that. I mean, those are just like the plot points. There's a lot of animal cruelty, but it does go much deeper into that. Just, again, women's mental health and just how you feel during a breakup and a new situation, trying to literally dig yourself out of a hole, but then treating anyone who tries to get close to you again like shit because of your trauma. Like, this book just goes so deep into mental health, and I absolutely loved this one. Beautifully written, such a well done book. And then the last Melissa recommendation that I was obsessed with was I Wished by Dennis Cooper, and I fucking love Dennis Cooper on this channel, you know that. So this one is kind of like an experimental book of, it's like a mixture of some short stories and some like nonfiction essays, I guess, is how I would describe this book. It's really weird. But if you don't know about Dennis Cooper, he believes the only man that he's ever loved is a man named George Miles when they were teenagers. And so a lot of his books are kind of loosely based off of George, like characters that are based off of George. And he wrote this book because he found out that George died by suicide, and he didn't know until like 10 years later or something. He found out because no one told him. So this is kind of his book trying to process his feelings for George and trying to figure out why George never loved him the same way in return as he loved George. And basically puts him into fictionalized stories. Like there's a story about John Wayne Gacy. There's a story about like this famous artist, I believe. And then there's a story, like there's a story about Santa Claus, just like these weird experimental type stories. But then there are, like I said, there's the nonfiction component, and it is so beautiful and sad and filled with longing and yearning and just this deep sadness, trying to process why he wasn't loved the same way in return, but then also trying to process his grief after George's death. Such a beautiful, beautiful book, while also being weird and fucked up and disturbing at the same time, in typical Dennis Cooper fashion. Then in March, I read Of Mice and Men by John Steinbeck. This one, listen, I get the hype. I get the hype. I don't know. I get the hype, I think. So this is, if you don't know about these two guys who, one is mentally challenged and then the other one is just like his friend who hangs out with him. And they basically have these big dreams, like kind of like the American dream. Like, we're gonna work all these jobs and save up our money and get like this big ranch and like own a farm or whatever they wanted to do, okay? So they take up this job and some bleak, horrible, horrific things happen from there. It's so short. I don't want to give anything away if you're unfamiliar with this, but it's just a book that explores a lot. I can see why this is one that is so well known and like studied in school or whatever, but also at the same time I'm like, this is a very traumatizing book to be studying in school. Yeah, but this book is about alienation and how people in marginalized groups are treated. I mean, people get really upset about the content of this book, but I definitely think it was on purpose, because there is this moral aspect at the end where you have to sit and think like, was this justified and morally correct or not? And I think in order to question those points, some of the language and the treatment of some of these people had to be done throughout the book. Am I making any sense at all? I'm trying not to give anything away. I feel like the way that this was written was done on purpose, okay? I think it proves a point at the end of the book, but yeah, the whole moral aspect, but just like the exploration of hopelessness, loneliness. I mean, this book is fucking bleak through and through. Like, this is pure depression. I finally read The Secret History by Donna Tartt and I absolutely loved it. This one, if you don't know, is about a group of students. So our main character, he gets accepted, he gets this once-in-a-lifetime kind of opportunity at this boarding school, college, and he goes there and he gets accepted into this program with this classics professor, so he teaches like Greek and Latin and history, and so he gets accepted into this class where there's only 5 other students. So he's getting to know these 5 other students who are super rich and privileged, and we're getting to know them through the eyes of our main character, who's like middle class, normal guy, and we're just seeing how these rich, privileged students interact with one another. But in the first 3 pages, one of them is dead. They kill the one student in the first 3 pages. So you're like, what the fuck is going on? So there's this little murder mystery aspect in the background of this book. But it's more so about like the characters and how they interact with one another and the world around them. Really well done book, extremely well written. I just needed to know where this was going at all times. I just loved her writing and the way that she was able to bring these characters to life. And there's just something I love when it comes to reading about rich, shitty, privileged people who do drugs. And that's exactly what this book was. The last couple chapters, like the epilogue, almost made me cry. Yeah, this was a very sad, depressing, well done read, and I was so into it. I was so into the murder mystery rich people vibes, okay? Then in April, I had some bangers, okay? April's not even done yet while I'm filming this, but I just gotta get this video done. So the first one, I finally read Blue Nights by Joan Didion. Loved this book. This is a memoir about, if you didn't know, Joan Didion's husband passed away and her daughter passed away, like very, very close together. So this book is more so focusing on her daughter and when her, like, the events kind of leading up to her daughter's death and her processing her grief afterwards, but also follows her dealing with aging and grief in a way where she's slowly losing her autonomy. And I think the way that this book was put together, where Joan Didion is such a fantastic writer, where she'll like say something and you think that it's meaningless, you're like, what the hell is she talking about? But then it also connects into like the next thing that she's about to say, or she'll like repeat phrases or sentences throughout the book in a way where everything ends up kind of connecting one way or another. You think it doesn't connect, you think it's irrelevant, but then it ends up connecting and making sense. I don't know if I'm making sense, but Joan was a fantastic writer, and this book is so sad and depressing and heartfelt, and I love exploring grief through books. I don't know what that says about me as a person, but I love grief and longing, and like also I loved that exploration of her feeling herself getting older and losing her ability to drive and fearing like not being able to get up from a chair and all these little things that we take for granted. Yeah, I love this book so much, and exploring the painful reality of existence. That's what this book is. Speaking of nights, we had Blue Nights. I also have White Nights by Fyodor Dostoevsky. This is a teeny tiny little novella about unrequited love. So we're following a guy who meets a girl and he falls in love with her. That's basically this book. So he meets this woman and they fall in love, you know, having conversations. They kind of meet up at the same place every night. And he finds out that she's actually like waiting for another guy that she's in love with. So it's this like unrequited love trope about, you know, he's not gonna be loved the same way in return. And the quotes in this book, the quotes just, gutted me. This book gutted me. I love this so much. I feel like this is so painfully relatable to everyone to some degree. Either you have been in this situation where you haven't been loved the same way in return, either you are yearning and longing all the time. That's what this book is about also. He talks about how he's yearning all the time. Like, yeah, same. And also, if you've ever been in the scenario of the girl where you have to pick between two people and then you might pick the wrong one, I don't know, that's a tough situation to be in also, okay? Or what was my other scenario? Or if you're only loved by someone when it's convenient, relatable. Okay, every single thing in this book was so relatable and sad and depressing, and I loved it so much. It's so good, okay? It was so good. I will say, too many exclamation points and too many periods, though. I will say that. I read the new Mark Hoppus memoir, Fahrenheit 182. Of course, Mark Hoppus from Blink-182, my favorite band from childhood. So of course I had to buy this immediately and read it the day that it came out. I love this so much. So we're of course, you know, just following Mark and his personal life and how Blink-182 started and the details of the band and kind of his falling out with Tom and what happened there, but then also his battle with cancer, and he beat cancer. He's cancer-free now, and just all of his ups and downs throughout his life and his career, and you know how he met his wife. And this book was so good, first of all, because I loved getting to learn all about Blink-182, but I was so sad. I think I cried like 8 times reading this book. I don't know what it was. There were just certain things, like especially the cancer chapters, but like, you know, him talking about his wife and it's certain things about the band that literally made me tear up and cry because it was just like sad or it was heartfelt. And I don't know, this book had me all over the place emotion-wise. One of my favorite memoirs of all time, I think, actually. I loved it so much. It had a special place in my heart. And I love Blink-182. What can I say? And then last but not least, my favorite book of April and probably all of 2025 maybe so far is Rejection by Toni Tulathamuti. This is a short story collection. I have an entire review up about this book. It should be up probably before this video, so I will leave it linked up above and down below. But yeah, this is about, it's satire about rejection and being chronically online and just how sensitive and ridiculous our current society is, and virtue signaling, and it's satire making fun of literally all of us on the internet, okay? It's a smart book, it's clever, it's witty, it's smart, it's intellectual, it's everything. It's hilarious. Literally one of the funniest books I've ever read. So if you are interested in hearing my thoughts, I will leave that video up so you can go check that out. But this is probably my favorite book of 2025 so far. So that's it. Those were my favorite books so far in 2025. If you've read any of these, let me know in the comments down below, or let me know your favorite books so far that you've read January through April, and I will see you in my next video. Bye.